So I remember this this story of Stanley going to Africa looking for Livingstone. And what was very clear with Stanley, he was writing, I think, for the equivalent of the New York Times back then, you know, telling his peers in New York or in the US or in Europe what Africa was about. And all these stories of Stanley talking about Africa actually, I don't want to call them cliche, but his perception of Africa is still very true today. You can actually see when you look at all the media, you know, they're still using the same kind of perception somehow on Africa. Stanley actually, you know, did. So what is the problem with this approach of somebody writing for an audience? Because that's what Stanley was doing, writing for a specific audience that want to hear, you know, stories about who are these people, you know, how they live. So you could see very clearly how manipulative, you know, this idea of writing for an audience, and as far as Africa is concerned, could be. And so you have the same in cinema somehow, and you have people making films to kind of interpret a place, to translate Africa to those who don't understand it, you know, to explain it, you know, and that also matches the whole formula storytelling as it's being developed by all these guru in screenwriting, you know, Robert McKee, Sid Field, you know, those people who write these books like how to make a screenplay that sells in 21 days. So all these recipes, you know, about a good story for film, for cinema, you feel that there is this intention of writing for an audience. And I go back to Ntone, who actually feels that it's not much about telling a story for an audience, but it's actually telling it from a place, you know. And I feel like that's a little bit what I try to do in Quartier Mozart, for example, my first film. Just tell a story from a place. And as soon as the place is more important than the audience you're talking to, I think it's a whole different, I mean, you get a whole different take on the subject. So, and I don't want to say that because Stanley was speaking to Europeans, it's more manipulative than when I've been asked as a filmmaker to speak to Africans, you know, because even the intention of saying, okay, I'm going to make a film for Africans is still as manipulative as Stanley telling the story for Europeans when he's talking about Africa. So, going back to Ntone, it's to say that it's a way of telling a story from somebody and not telling it for somebody. You know, people always like when you tell them, you know, this food tastes like chicken, you know. But why can't we just accept that it tastes differently? Why do we want to compare to something we know? And I feel the same with Africa and even cinema in general. We always want to tell a story using a reference system. You know, we know. But how do we explore the unknown? Because there are things we don't know. You know, so if we should have a reference for everything, so it means that we actually have already defined the whole world. So it's almost like there are no anymore anything we're not organized and we're not ready to actually go into kind of the adventure to discover new things. Me personally, that's the kind of direction I'm very interested in. And I do think that if we have to talk about African cinema of the future, this is something personally I'm interested in. And also because the whole Europeocentric world is kind of changing, because now you have money, even for films in Dubai. You have Chinese who are now watching films. So I think the whole idea of telling story for a specific audience, and mainly Western audience, has completely distracted not just African cinema, but cinema in general, from being a kind of form of expression, presenting a reality or life, that surrounds us. So, voila, roughly what I just want to talk to you about today. Thank you.